Yes,
Hopefully,
yes, yes.
I'm
Yeah,
audible now.
yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I have already shared the screen. Is it visible there?
Yes, yes.
Well, thanks Indranil for introducing me, and I express my gratitude to CII as well as to Indranil and Kunal and IT Help Desk as well for providing this wonderful opportunity to present in front of you this in this particular session, which is adopting innovative techniques for imparting education through e-learning. I do welcome my co-panelists here in this session, and we will be hearing to them equally. I mean, we are eager to hear to them as well with their presentations. Very warm welcome to all of you, those who are the participants, and a very good afternoon. In this particular session, I would like to touch upon some of the topics which are related to e-learning, starting from significance of e-learning and followed by growth of e-learning and all the things which are uh, somehow related to e-learning. During COVID-19, all of us have already encountered certain kind of difficulties in terms of teaching learning because of the fact all over the world, universities and colleges are shut down. Now, this is really creating some kind of a trouble because we are not able to meet the students face to face. Neither the students are able to get access of us face to face due to several reasons, and we have rather observed that there is a paradigm shift that has happened with the help of online platforms or e-learning platforms that have replaced for the time being the traditional system of education. So here, what we can see that the shift that which has happened has been embraced. I mean, some whether intentionally or whether with compulsion, that has been embraced by most of the people. After some of initial problems that they have faced to get conversant with the entire platform, but now it has been, and there are platforms like Extra Marks and Google Duo and Cisco WebEx on which we are now. So these are the several platforms, and there are many more which are actually leveraging this entire e-learning thing to the mass. Well, at XISS or Xavier Institute of Social Service, from where I belong to the Department of Information Technology in Xavier Institute. We have always embraced positive changes towards society. The main motto for all over India, we are having a motto of providing service to the society, and education is one of the ways by which we believe that we are providing a service to the society. So we have embraced changes like artificial intelligence, like machine learning, like data science. All these disruptive fields we have embraced, in our daily routine as well as in our syllabus, so that the students can become conversant with the job market as well. Similarly, for e-learning, which we have observed that it is a media by which the students are able to retain their information more and more. The logic behind this is there are certain parts of subjects for which a student has opted. The parts of that subject with which the student is already conversant with, and there are certain parts of the subject with which the student is not that conversant with. Now the students may be willing to pursue or emphasize or invest some more time on the subject area on which the student is not that much conversant. Well, in a case of e-learning, what happens that people who have joined the e-learning thing, that is the e-learning classes, they are hello, yeah, am I audible?
Yes, 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 sir.
So they are able to emphasize and they are able to invest more and more time on the areas where they are not that conversant with, and they may invest some lesser time in the areas which they are already conversant with, because of the fact the control is totally in their hand. So whether willingly or unwillingly, the control is no more in the hands of the instructor. and they are getting a flexibility in learning, which is actually helping them in the learning process, and which is facilitating the retention of information more than any other platform which they have already experienced. It is also less time consuming since there is no waiting for the teacher, neither for the fellow classmates. So whenever you want and wherever you want at the comfort of your home, you can start learning at any point of time. So this has been a great time saver, and those who are the participants or those who are taking the courses can invest their time to on some other aspects, like maybe with the family or maybe for their hobbies. So it has become their obvious choice, the e-learning and the popularity of e-learning. You can see here the growth of e-learning over a period of time, that how many Indians are really earning between $10 and $100 a day starting from 2010. So if we take the data from 2010 till 2030, we can observe here that it has started by 50 Indians per day who are earning $10 to $100 a day with the help of e-learning. Now it has reached in 2030, it is projected to be 475. In 2020, which we are in now, we are having almost 200 Indians who are earning almost $10 to $100 a day. So obviously the figures are in millions, as you can see, and this is the data which has been collected from World Education Services, so a survey data. So it is, but obviously a projected market of $350 billion is envisioned by 2025 for e-learning. So whether it is in terms of language apps or virtual tutoring or video conferencing, this is something which is, e-learning is something which is going to have a huge market in coming times. And we really cannot deny that whenever we are looking for certain kinds of video resources or video kind of a tutorial, how we go to YouTube and how we browse YouTube and try to find out the suitable things, and we do find many suitable things. But there is a little point, or there is a little area which I would like to emphasize here, that in YouTube, things are not very authentic all the time, because of the fact it's not that all the authorities all the times are allowing their videos in YouTube. It may be different sorts of people from different parts of life or from different walks of life, they have uploaded their videos in YouTube. So it's not guaranteed that it is always authentic. Hence, it is the responsibility, or it may be the call of the educationist or authorities these days on a particular domain to upload more and more authentic videos on YouTube, so that the people who are subscribers of YouTube can get the benefit out of it. We would try to explore that what is the innovation or what is that great thing in e-learning that is making it so popular. First is that it is not only the domain skill that you acquire with the help of e-learning. So there are several domain skills that you can acquire with the help of e-learning. That is true, but at the same time, it also teaches certain life skills. For example, in e-learning, there is nobody sitting there out there to spoon feed you. So obviously, what you can get is something which is you will be trying to find the problems on your own and solving the problems on your own. So that makes you a big problem solver. That is, e-learning is actually making you a big problem solver, as well as you can set your own goals, right? So when you are trying to finish, and when we are really willing to finish a thing, and what is important for you and what is not important for you, it is you who is deciding. So it is making you more or less self-dependent. Now, the aim of e-learning, pursuing e-learning, is not to secure high grades all the time. It is actually to learn a thing, since the learning, the urge of learning came from your curiosity of learning. So it is something that a person from arts background may be willing to do computer science, a person from a science background may be willing to do something from history or literature. So it's not that the person is sitting in a classroom, is sitting, and people may be laughing at that particular person who is from a different domain, since the person do not exhibit that kind of an expertise. But still, the person, there is no peer pressure in it. You are doing it at the ease of your home, and you are flexible to learn this. So hence the experience, you are experiencing a meaningful learning. So that is how you are gaining skills in the process. Those are the life skills which you are gaining, as well as those are the tricks and trends in real life which you are gaining with the help of e-learning. So obviously, in this COVID-19 lockdown period, this is once in a lifetime opportunity for enhance our skill uninterrupted. So what is the mindset of the learners these days, that they would like to enhance their skills they have received. That is why we see a surge of enrollments there in edX, FutureLearn, Coursera, and places like this. These platforms, Udemy. So these are platforms where we are finding that these things are the enrollment are quite high. Another platform which is a very well-known platform, which is MOOCs, that is Massive Open Online Courses, and you can find the great applications of MOOCs there in NPTEL and Swayam websites by MHRD. So there also we have seen a huge surge of enrollment these days. There are certain categories in which, if you observe these online courses which are being developed, it is initiating from flipped course. Now, what is a flipped course? Flipped course is nothing but in traditional classroom, what we do 90% of the time we spend on our discussion on theory and 10% on interaction with students. But in case of flipped course, what we usually do is 90% is we are interacting with the students, asking them questions while answering their questions. It's maybe probably like a case study kind of a scenario, and you are only 10% of time you are investing to mention the significant points. That's what is a flip course kind of a scenario. A face-to-face is a traditional scenario that we often encounter in a normal offline classroom that we do online with the help of different platforms, like as I already mentioned, like WebEx, like Google Duo, and things like that. A hybrid course is a mix of flipped course as well as a face-to-face. A web-based course is nothing but you find the courses videos which are uploaded in different sites like edX, like Coursera, like FutureLearn, SimplyLearn. So you can have those courses and certifications. Now, peer instruction is something new that has been a brainchild of Harvard, where you post the curriculum of particular course in a website or somewhere in a portal. There, various aspirants who are interested to take the course do enroll, and they discuss among themselves whatever they want to learn out of that particular guidelines or the curriculum that you have posted. So they are it is on a rather on a discussion mode, peer to superior, for that matter, instructor or professor who is guiding. So that is what is the peer instruction platform. And MOOC, as I have already described, mainly for the university professors addressing a large classroom kind of a scenario. That is what is a massive open online course. So these are the popular categories of online courses. So far so good, that it looks like we are having different kinds of online deliveries, but then I must say that it is not that easy to prepare something which you want to deliver online. What you require is to have a specific kind of a strategy, and and a mode or a method by which your students or whoever will be listening to you enjoy the learning process. So the process is significantly different from the traditional teaching process. So what are the requirements? Some basic requirements are: you have to have a very clear visualization, and you have to have clarity of delivery. That is the voice in which you are delivering. It shouldn't be having very much of lag, like like this kind of thing should not. So it should be continuous, and we must remove the lags out of it. And the visualization, whatever we are trying to show, must be very clean and clear, right? So this is what is a main requirement. And then you need to break the sessions, because you see there is no compulsion for the student to sit through your session throughout an hour or two, something like that. The student may flip out. And it has been found out that maximum retention capacity or attention capacity of a student being maximum 5 minutes. So it is very cleverly you have to break your session. You may record a video of 20 minutes, but cleverly you have to break your sessions in 5 minutes or 6 minutes video, so that it remains interesting to the students, as well as students feel the urge to go to the next video, so that the student do not skip your lectures, right? So it is an entirely strategic kind of a thing, kind of a thinking that you need to have while you are preparing this kind of a online session. Well, there are certain modes of creating online content that I have already mentioned, that you are creating an online content. So there are certain kinds, as you can see enlisted here. One is tabletop, screencast, slidecast, and podcast. I am showing you with illustration. This is what is tabletop. You can write something on your table, and you can put a tripod like this, having a mobile camera set in it, and this mobile camera can record accordingly whatever you are writing. And followed by this is a screencast video. Whenever you try to teach some kind of a programming language or things like that, You can have a screencast kind of a thing. Here Python language programming is being taught, so this is what is a screencast video. Then is a slidecast video where you are teaching something based on theory or concept. You can have a slidecast video like this, and this is what is the example of a slidecast video, and this is a podcast like motivational speakers. So there are various motivational speakers where there is no video will come to you. So that is what is a podcast kind of a scenario. So these are the various platforms by which online you can create your material. But then, I have got inspired by many of the people who are like Jeffrey Hinton, like Kirill Eremenko, like Siraj Rawal. They are creating magnificent videos like this. So I have tried my hands as well in my own YouTube channel, which is Curious Neuron. If you want, you can have a look on the kind of slidecast and the screencast videos which I have made by clicking on the following link, which is just now reflected on the screen. So these are certain kinds of videos which we have created in at XISS. I have created this from the Department of IT so that we can reach to a larger audience who otherwise are not able to come to XISS and cannot be able to interact face to face. So this is how it has been created, and you can have a look. So there are certain advanced modes of as well for video creation. Those advanced modes which are there are talking head videos, overhead videos, and animated videos. But then I must tell you, talking head videos is something in which it appears that you are as if talking directly to the people who are listening to you. And overhead videos are whenever you are demonstrating some kind of a hardware, like unboxing of a mobile or something like that. That is overhead video. And animated videos, the way you are describing with the help of several animations. But these requires huge infrastructure and investments. So these are much advanced modes. There must be certain usage of softwares, and here I have mentioned certain open source softwares. So there must be a screen recording the software, and there must be editing software. So these OBS, that is Open Broadcast Studio, Screencast-O-Matic, and Flashback Express, these are all screen recording softwares by which you can record your screencast or slidecast videos. And OpenShot is a video recording software. Slack is again a kind of a platform where you can interact with your students by forming small groups, and also you can transfer different kinds of files like videos, PPTs, and these kinds of uploads. So this actually creates your classroom, and Slack actually eradicates the use of mail, and it becomes a more informal kind of a chat between you and your students. Importance of editing is always there because of the fact you need to make your video attractive. You need to remove the noises, you need to remove the lag. So as far as providing to the community, make it as good as possible so that it becomes a learning experience for you as well as for your students. And the main thing is that whenever you are doing this kind of a project, you will understand that creativity and originality will be brought out of you, and how creative you are and how original you are, that will be reflected in your work. Hence, embracing online teaching learning is the near future as well as a necessary present, and we need to adopt it as soon as we can. This is what I was present in front of you. Thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you very much. Now, I would request my next fellow co-panelist to kindly take over and deliver. My next speaker is Mr. Ramaprasad Ghosh. He is the Director Consulting India of PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers Private Limited. Hello, am I audible?
I can hear you.
Yeah. So yes, Ramaprasad, Ramaprasad is an education technology leader in PwC Education Service Team and focuses on improving efficiency and integrated operations in K-12, HE, and other educational organizations. He is the architect of many automation and collaboration solutions which are embraced in multiple educational institutes. He is working with universities to adopt digital transformation and education 4.0. His domain of expertise includes process improvement and technology transformation in academic and education management, student and institution management, citizen social security implementation, secure digital ecosystem, employee effectiveness, etc. He is currently advising in K-12 HE enterprises for strategy development, operations improvement, and technology implementation. He is also working to democratize 21st century skills. I do welcome Mr. Ramaprasad Ghosh here on the dais, and to please take over. Over to you, Mr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Indranil. So it is my pleasure Thank you all for attending it and giving me this time to spare few of my thoughts with you. So I'll start. Thank where Mr. Rick has talked. He has clearly elaborated the requirement of the e-learning and how it can be meaningful in today's scenario. Can you see my presentation? I mean, I would like to take you through a small presentation as Rick has
Yes.
taken, highlighting that in the current situation, what we say that when we are working from a distance model, we are most of us working and participating from home. So what are the new dimensions of today in the workforce? What we see? We see that digital backbone has become the absolute necessary. Whoever has the right kind of digital backbone and the platform, those are sailing ahead and they are able to address the need of the current situation very well. The demand of the physical structure is becoming less important at this time. Now, as we are saying, uh, whatever digital transformation, and we see that few couple of months back, we have not heard or we have not felt the urge of having this kind of digital platform, but it is the reality now. And going forward, probably it will continue like that, and we will get habituated with this normal. And probably first we'll inquire before a student on getting on board to higher education, probably inquire what kind of digital framework is there or digital structure platforms are there. More than that, then what kind of physical infrastructure is there. Now, what is the new model? What we are working? We are working right now from anywhere. The location and the physical barrier has gone. So I'll give you one of the example. Like we work with different clients across the globe, and they used to ask that give us resources who are in that particular location. Let's say they are asking the resources. My team should be seated in the Kolkata location, and since it is so that the team interaction and all those works very smoothly. But right now, for the last 2 months, whatever the requirements we are getting, it doesn't matter which location I am able to provide the resource to them. Even the large team, let's say 50-member team is working from Kolkata and I need another 2 member. If they are sitting in the Bangalore and I give the CV today, they are accepting because they understood that the physical location doesn't matter anymore. Now, if that is the scenario of new work model, the learning model cannot stay far behind, right? Even in the corporate, the learning models, the student, the new resource onboarding, all are happening through digitally, and that is slowly getting percolated into the education world also. So where the new work model is driving the digital, the new learning model at the academic area, and how the challenges will remain that how will become formal digitally. You can see only my face, but you cannot see my gesture, you cannot see my what is my surrounding environment is, whether I am able to deliver this formal way, whether my mentality is delivering the course and the content in more formal way or not. And then the more engaging than the discipline tracking and the discipline and the tracking. If you see the picture, what I'm trying to show today is the student attention, the class, or in the engagement of the student in a particular course, at the physical infrastructure was being tracked different way. I mean, it was student was hardly used to skip the class, may not participate, but there are different physical way of capturing their engagement. But today, when we are talking about the e-learning mode, the only two weapon the student needs to, not to get engaged is mute and removing the video. So I don't know, once the student, the control is at the student hand. So when the student is just muting or removing the video, you don't know whether student is paying attention to your lecture. So keeping that in mind, that we need to be also thoughtful that when you are talking the e-learning, how it can be more engaging rather than chasing the student to participate in the course and content. The next slide, I would like to highlight that what are the critical components of imparting education through e-learning. So there I feel that there are four major dimensions where we need to address to impart education through e-learning. One is you need to have a robust platform. The platform should allow to help you to do the plan, schedule, track, and provide the right kind of access to the right kind of participants. It could be instructor, facilitator, or could be student, or could be course coordinator. Whoever it is, everybody should have a right kind of access control. Now the second dimension is the content, what we are going to teach. So now the content, as I'm talking, it could be just a audio based content, and also it could be different varieties of content which can help us to engage the student. So the second important factor is what should be my content, how I am going to give it, what I'm going to share with the student or my audience. The third most important is the delivery technique. Yes, my platform is there, my content is there, I know what to teach, but how I am going to deliver. Now, these delivery things will make the students more engaged, or they may not be engaged. So innovative way of delivering the content needs to be addressed. We need to handle the student, as I said, that they just should not use that mute or the video button for their own wish. They should perform, engage, so that they can understand what you are going to teach. The fourth most way of engaging the students, or the fourth most dimension is the collaborative environment. Now, it should not be an environment where it's like one-way delivery is happening. It should not be the faculty who is the teaching or delivering the course and the content, and we don't hear the voice of the student, or we don't allow the student to collaborate among themselves. The peer collaboration is very much important. As they used to do in the physical environment, they should be able to do in the digital platform as well. So the faculty and the student communication, faculty student collaboration, and peer-to-peer collaboration is also a very much important factor. And the platform should also give you that both the facility, one is on demand self-paced learning, so the student should be able to learn on their own time, in own pace, whenever they wish to learn, whatever they wish to learn. As Mr. Rigdas has said, that there are many platforms, many courses are there which helps to give the online, on-demand, and the self-paced learning facility to the students. And the second biggest dimension would be instructor-led virtual classroom based training. So that is a kind of simulation of your physical environment, how a teacher used to teach at the classroom. The virtual classroom should help the teacher to deliver in the similar fashion. So as I said, that considering all these four dimensions, which can help me to plan, schedule, track, which help me to teach the things I want to teach, it helps me to deliver with more emotionally, formally, and more co-creative manner. And also it helps to collaborate within the student, within the peer-to-peer collaboration, or with the faculty collaboration, by in terms of chat, breakout sessions, virtual classroom, blogs, wiki, all those facilities should be there in the digital platform. Then it can help you in a very robust way to impart the education through e-learning. Other aspects I'd like to highlight, that now that I have, even if I choose the best of the platform where I am doing all my planning, tracking, and all those, but how I am delivering, that is the most important way, how innovative I am to deliver to the student, so that they will remain engaged in the class. That is more important. Now, if you say on the left side of my slide, the audio will always be there. As I am talking or faculty member is talking, the audio will always be there. But audio is only one channel. My brain, a student or a human brain, can assimilate or correlate the information from multiple channels. What are my other channels? Yes, visual channels. My the sound, that is also another channel. The physical gesture and all those meaningful articulation is also another channel. So if we can pass the information to the student in different channels, then the student will get more engaged and they will remain busy to assimilate those information. If we take the example of how the Mahabharata was written, as Vedavyas given the condition to the uh, Ganesha, that without understanding what I'm saying, you should not write what you are writing, because Ganesh gives the condition that you can write as if I stop, I won't write anymore further. Now here the Vedbas taken that advantage of assimilating time of that information. Now if we can similarly keep busy the student during your presentation or in the lecture to assimilate the information, they will be engaged. Just being having a text on the board or just by talking may not make sense to them, or they might find something more interested other than your lecture, the time you are delivering. So this is how, based on our experience, what we see, if we try to give the importance, what keeps a human being more engaged, the text based delivery is the lowest most impact it has. Then it comes the infographic type delivery. If your presentation lecture has infographic or picture, then it keeps the student engaged more than the text based delivery. Then the third or high level, you can say that video or animated delivery along with all other sorts like text, infographic, picture and audio. So if you can use all these channels together, that makes the engagement more fruitful and student will be participating more. So the two things remain over there is being objective. What is my objective of my course, or the what I'm going to convey to my audience? And second thing is, what should be my strategy to do that? As I said, that if it is only text based, low participation, the strategy could be solo. The faculty member alone could talk and only talk, and that is how that delivery can be. The next big thing, when it is like showing the pictorial presentation of complex process and with lot of information data on your presentation, and using less text or verbiage keeps the student more engaged to assimilate the information. It will keep the student busy and they will be attentive to the audience. So in this hierarchy, I have shown that the right kind of strategy will be to use the relevant video. On the topmost corner, you see that uh, if your objective is to use the best of the digital potential. So when we are talking the e-learning innovative way, we have to think about our objective is to use the digital potential to the maximum level. So we need to tell or engage with the student in a more storytelling manner. And experience teaching, when I say the experience teaching, teaching through example or through the story or through a pictorial or through a video. So that is my experience teaching. It's not a just a verbose teaching. That will ensure the high student engagement. And your strategy piece, as one of the very important feature Mr. Digdash has mentioned, is flipped classroom. Now, what you are going to teach and teach to the student, if you have the schedule, if you can publish early to the student and ask them to be ready on that day, that what you are going to teach, so they can also do the homework. You can nominate few students to do more research and do a presentation on that same media the way we are doing, so they can also highlight a related video or a related infographic on the chart. So that way they will get more engaged, they will be more informed, and the actual lecture will be only facilitating lecture. So the student will be able to engage, as well as the learning will be more if the flipped classroom technique is adopted in the e-platform. And it is very easy. Here you'll see that one of the bottleneck, when I in the advantage of the digital medium is on the physical school, right? So if you If you ask a student, come, stand up, and in front of the audience, give a presentation, they will be shaky. They may not be, if they may not feel confident to come forward and talk over here because visible, their body language is visible, what they are talking is visible. But if you allow them to be, participate in the digital medium through this presentation, so they are not much more visible, but their content is visible. So they will also feel more confident and the shyness will go away. So this is very much important technique. You can you can use of that. And uh, uh, the another strategy will be the early preparation. Yes, what you are going to teach, if you have the early preparation, that what kind of slide cast or the screencast, what you want to do, or what kind of video you want to show it to them, all if you plan it well, then the session will be more productive and effective. And it should not be monotonous. The lecture should have a infographic, it should be a audio based lecture, and then it should be a short video based lecture. Everything should need not to follow in the same manner, so that you can bring more variation and more attractive. So that is my submission about how e-learning can be more impactful or innovative. And the last point I would like to bring here is being formal. So when we work from physical distance and over the screen, if I just switch off my video, you don't know what I am wearing or what kind of environment I'm talking through. So enabling the video, asking the student or all the participant to enable the video, and also at the same time, if the teacher is more formal while delivering this lecture, teacher also should think that I am in a classroom, so what kind of formal attire I should have, or what kind of formal environment I should have. So keeping all this in mind, I can say example, one of my friend was taking the class on the digital media, and he was saying that he doesn't feel that whether students are participating or students are listening to him at all. So I said that how you are preparing. Are you switching on of your video? He's saying, no, I am not, because I am just a very informal attire I am using. I am sitting probably on my bed, I am giving the lecture. But I said, try to get out of that thing that you are in a classroom among the student, you have the formal attire, you switch on of your video, you wish to the student and ask the student to do the same. Student will feel engaged, student will talk to you, and also the empathy thing matters, right? Today, the situation is such that we don't know the participant at what condition. Probably at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. also could not got a chance to have the lunch. So it is just in the new normal. Probably it will be good to ask that if all of them has the breakfast or lunch, or what is the situation in their complex or in the neighborhood, how people are buying and how they are doing their daily life. So all those things matters to get engaged with the student, and it is absolutely okay in today's time to talk about all those. So with this, I'm stopping here. Probably I'll come back in the last, that if you have any further question to me. Thank you, Indranil.
Business for Cisco India and SARC. Pankaj heads the collaboration business in Cisco India and SARC. He is responsible for driving strategy and growth for the collaboration business in India. With over 20 years of industry experience, Pankaj helps Cisco's customers innovate in this digital world and gets diverse people from different backgrounds to collaborate effectively and solve complex business problems. Prior to Cisco Systems, Pankaj was heading the business application sales at Microsoft and has worked in companies like IBM, Sun Microsystem, and Silicon Graphics. Welcome, Mr. Agarwal, to this platform. And now over to you, Mr. Agarwal.
I hope you can see my slide.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, all, and thanks for having me. I was actually tempted to take this session wearing my T-shirt, but just listening to Mr. Ghosh, I'm glad I changed into a formal shirt. Very valid point, Mr. Ghosh, about appearing attired properly. So, as we adjust to the new normal or the new abnormal, as some people are calling it, for education, it's been a rapid transition. So I see both of my daughters actively involved in attending video classes, downloading homework from school portals, working on that, etc. Now, I noticed that the first attempt from my daughter's schools has been to maintain continuity. So they quickly scrambled and figured out a way to replicate the physical classroom setting in a virtual domain. Now we understand that remote learning has a setting which is different from a classroom. But what is important for us to realize is that while there may be certain drawbacks in the remote learning mechanism, the most prominent being the lower quality of engagement as compared to a physical classroom, it also has several benefits over a physical classroom. So beyond just replicating a classroom to a virtual setting, we can actually leverage the additional possibilities that a remote learning platform offers. And that is what I'm going to talk about over the next 20 minutes. So there was this joke floating around which went like the key driver for digital transformation in my organization was 3 options. 1, CTO, 2, CFO, 3, COVID. So COVID has driven digital transformation like no one ever anticipated. What does that look like? So there are several changes which are expected at macro level. These include things like decentralization of city centers, planned reduction in dependence on China as a sole supplier, etc. But the point of most relevance to us is the rise of contactless services. So while some of us may feel that remote learning is something which has been forced upon us for a short period and things will go back to normal soon, we may soon realize that this could become a way of life, at least part of the changes that we've seen. Just as a parallel, many of you might have heard that the Chief Operating Officer for TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, announced a couple of weeks back that they will have 75% of their staff, that is 75% of 4.5 lakh employees, permanently working from home by 2025. So that is significant. Obviously, that is something which is coming about as a result of the learnings that they have had after seeing that people work from home and the productivity and all of that. The benefits that they see. In a similar manner, I believe remote learning is something which might continue in some way or the other throughout our lives. Now, clearly, as a majority of education was happening through physical classroom, the social distancing norms have impacted education in a massive way. And we see some of the numbers here on the percentage of school students, etc., who have been impacted. So the impact is massive. The good news is that for education, the customers for you are the Gen Z or Generation Z people, and these people were born with technology. You do not face any resistance to technology. On the contrary, the students just lap up technology. And we already see educational institutes taking the lead. These are a few news headlines that talk about the top schools in India who've taken the lead on not just maintaining business continuity, but also on things like engaging students in research during the downtime, for example, and so on. Now, okay, allow me to get this entire slide. Okay. Now, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind when you're planning for remote learning. The first is that it is not just your students who are remote, but also your own people, including teachers and other employees who are now accessing all of your organization's resources remotely. So you will need to provision for that. You will need to worry about security, VPN, etc. This kind of remote access. More importantly, all of your meetings and teaching sessions are now happening online. Now, this throws up certain challenges related to security and privacy. So when you were in a closed door meeting or classroom, you are assured of the confidentiality. Now, when the same meeting moves to a collaboration platform, you obviously expect the same level of confidentiality. But what happens if a random stranger is able to join your meeting and listen in, get access to your internal content? even worse, what happens if this person can post objectionable content while your meeting is going on? How does this impact reputation with parents of students who've been exposed to such content? Can a cost be put on that? And we've all heard of incidents like that. So these are aspects related to security. Of equal importance are privacy related concerns. Does someone have access to your data? Is it being rented out or sold to organizations like Facebook? It is extremely important for organizations to do a serious assessment of the security and privacy track record of the collaboration platform that they choose. And just to plug in for a few seconds, at Cisco, our guiding principle has always been collaboration without compromise. So with Cisco WebEx, we never compromise on any security requirements, privacy, encryption, intellectual property, transparency, etc. No wonder we are a trusted collaboration solution provider, trusted by 95% of the Fortune 500 organizations. Now, when you're looking at setting up a remote learning platform, there are multiple aspects which need to be considered. From connecting classrooms and connecting the entire campus to the actual platform which is used for collaboration, to a platform to enable research, and all of this while maintaining security. Cisco solutions can actually enable all of these, but I'm going to focus on the need of the hour, which is a platform for providing training to students who are at home at current times. As I mentioned at the start, we need to leverage the advantages that remote training has over classroom training. We've done research on the best practices in this field, and I'm going to talk about some of those here. Now, one advantage of a remote solution is that you can create a virtual space for the class on which the students and teacher can interact before and after the class. So they can chat, they can share documents, etc. on this space. Pre-reading material can be shared before the class. Post-class brainstorming discussions can be encouraged on the same platform. Besides the WebEx meetings platform, we provide WebEx Teams, which is a platform which can be used for doing something like this. It looks something like this, so you could have multiple groups, or you could have people with whom you chat. You can have text, you can have content being shared, all of that at one place. So very good for driving collaboration within students in a class. Now, there are multiple things which can be done, which are different from a typical physical classroom setting. So, for example, teachers sometimes need to schedule time with students outside their regular classes. This can be done seamlessly on WebEx meetings through your calendar or the LMS system. And these office hours can be conducted on WebEx meetings. Teachers can keep track of students' assignments and provide assistance to students on these assignments using WebEx Teams, the same platform which I showed a few seconds earlier. Teachers can post recordings of their lectures on the same Teams platform so that students can access them on their time, again using WebEx meetings. Again, this is something which is not available in a physical classroom setting, right? And we know that for students, group projects are so important for learning and teamwork. Again, WebEx Teams can be used. Students can collaborate effectively no matter where they are, at any time, 24/7. They can keep track of their assignments in one place so that don't miss anything, and they can ensure that these assignments are submitted on time. So while a physical classroom provides a great personal connect, a good remote learning platform can provide superior engagement options such as the one I spoke about. Sorry, is there a question? Okay. Now, the design of the course also needs to be tweaked to get the most. So one needs to be conscious that when you are in an online medium, it might take you longer to cover the same content as compared to a face-to-face classroom setting. So you might want to split the content into pre-read, the actual session content, and there could even be post-session work. So the designing of the course could be slightly different from a physical classroom setting. You also need to be conscious of the fact that in an online session, students may multitask. I think Professor Das spoke about this. So it is important to plan some level of interaction every 5 minutes. Otherwise, someone sitting at home, not being engaged, could quickly move on to some other screen or someplace else entirely. So plan for some interaction every 5 minutes. You should also work on building the right classroom culture How do you ensure that every student feels included, students feel safe, accepted, you build a sense of community, etc. There are various things that you can do to keep the students engaged. For example, you might follow a workshop model. Now, this works well because unlike a classroom setting, there are no logistical challenges. So in a workshop model, you could have a mini lesson followed by independent practice that students do, followed by those students sharing either individually or in groups and doing a discussion. Now, again, there are very powerful tools which can be used to get the most out of such a workshop exercise. So WebEx provides whiteboards, which are great for interaction and this kind of sharing. There is polling, which is available to engage people during a workshop. There is screen sharing, which allows everyone to interact, and various technology-based tools like that. Again, you can introduce a lot of fun in remote learning beyond what is possible in a physical classroom setting. So you could use engaging videos. You can have some gamification. You can drive certain activities where people score points. There is a friendly competition across individuals or across groups. There is some problem solving that you can encourage. Again, interactivity and student talk can be better in a remote learning mechanism, because this can be done without disturbing the natural flow. In a physical classroom, if someone has questions, gives feedback, basically that disturbs the natural flow. Whereas in a remote learning, besides voice, you also have the option of getting students' feedback on chat. So people could post their comments, you could go on and when you need, you could come back to that point and engage. So the interactivity could be much richer. You could encourage collaboration by promoting group work. So you can form teams can share documents, chat, etc. Again, using a platform like WebEx Teams. They can host WebEx discussions. When a student is hosting something, it eliminates the feeling of isolation which may creep in when someone is working remotely, etc. Again, breaks can be made fun. You're giving a 10-minute break. You could have a fun video playing during the break, which a student can optionally watch. You could have a countdown timer during that break so that people are not late. Again, these are innovative things which can be done on remote learning. One needs to be conscious. One needs to be human, accept natural surroundings, understand that we all are not living in 5-room apartments. There could be children moving around in the background. Encourage keeping the video on so that the quality of engagement is higher, even if there is a pet moving around or a child moving around. You could have celebrations. You could celebrate birthdays, different milestones that groups of the class have achieved. And again, now for these celebrations, you can use GIFs, you can use avatars, you can use images. You could again use virtual badges as awards. You can have leaderboards which can be published. These are things which happen naturally on a remote learning mechanism and not so naturally in a physical classroom setting. What's more, you can actually engage parents and community better. So inviting parents to a WebEx meeting involves much lesser effort from parents than actually going on a weekend physically to the school and meeting. You can explain to them how they can better support students. Now you can even invite a parent as a guest speaker. So a lot of parents have distinguished backgrounds and they can be invited as a guest speaker. It's very little effort for the parent to come on as a remote guest speaker. You can invite subject matter experts who may not be parents and other eminent people as guest speakers on these classes. So a lot of things really which can be done using these platforms. Now, beyond just talking about it, I also want to illustrate this with an example. So a large number of educational institutes globally have been using WebEx meetings and WebEx Teams to get some of the benefits that I described. Now, one of those is ISB, Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. As you would know, it's a top-rated MBA institute in India. I just want to show you this short video, which in which they talk about the experience that ISB has had using WebEx. Just a couple of minutes.
So Indian School of Business is one of the premier MBA and executive education institutions in the world. As per the recently released ranking by Financial Times, we have been ranked number 24 in the world. We're also the number 1 MBA school in India. And also, if you look at one of the key parameters of MBA students in terms of increase in salary, after their MBA. We are number 3 in the world with having one of the highest increases secured by our students. How I look at it is not challenges, these are opportunities. As technology is changing, we all know that it's unfolding or unearthing a lot of opportunities for various institutions across the world. If I were to pick top 1 or 2, number 1 is how do we deliver digital learning in a most innovative manner. Number 2 would be, how do we look at research to be enabled further using digital products to produce even more world-class research, which is going to help the businesses and institutions across the world. And number 3 would be how do we look at digitization as something which can enable school to become more nimble, more efficient in its delivery of education. So Cisco is enabling us in many ways, right from helping us having an efficient network of Wi-Fi, which connects the entire digital applications to its users, which has been there for some time, and helping school to launch and upscale various digital products and their consumption. We are also using the collaborative tools of Cisco, like WebEx and recently WebEx Teams. We are particularly very excited about the WebEx Teams because we believe the format of WebEx Team can actually be integrated with several digital applications and enable the delivery of education through digital means, anytime, anywhere, depending upon who the consumer is and who the provider is. This opens the world basically for researchers in true sense, because you're not limited by the availability of a certain system or a network, and it allows you to kind of get access to the information in real time, collaborate with lots of stakeholders at the same time, which allows them to kind of further the depth of the research and also the time of the research. I'm quite excited about education. I think it's on the cusp of disruption. There are lots of more floated and discussed in the last 5 to 10 years, from MOOCs to delivery of education to a virtual classroom, etc. But I think the future of education personally is more peer-to-peer and more customized. What I mean by that is, I think very soon we will see a disruption in the way traditional education gets changed to customized education, right from school to even higher education. People will have the choice to choose what they want to study, when they want to study, how they want to study. And I think it will only be possible through digital enablement, digital products, and digitization.
So that's all from me. Thanks once again for having me, and I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Well, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mr. Agarwal, thank you for this wonderful session where you have mentioned about the innovation in remote learning, that what we really need to do and how to engage the students, as well as we have also came across your ideas about the Gen Z, how they are really understanding or how they are really taking this particular initiative of e-learning. Now we are open for the question answer session for the panelists, and whoever is having certain queries to any one of the panelists can just start asking the questions.
How to design experiments to take in the virtual labs in subjects like biology, biotechnology.
You are asking this question, madam? Hello.
I think whoever can address that question, I'm looking up to Professor Das if he can address this question.
Okay. Well, see, in case of virtual labs, you see, whenever you are talking of virtual labs, it is in the area of, let's say, simulation kind of a scenario, isn't it? Am I audible, madam? Hello. Hello.
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Yeah, well, so it is a simulation kind of a situation wherever you are trying to provide some kind, it's not only biology, but then virtual labs can be available for any sort of disciplines which are there. And you are actually providing remote access in to those labs wherever these experiments are being done. Now, one thing is that first you can create a prototype on your own, and you can have directly design these experiments as well as experience them, so that you know what are the actual outputs of this. Based on that, once you have a specific parameter, then you can design the same experiments or ask the students to design the experiments by providing them the remote access with the help of the platform or with the help of the internet, wherever they are feasible with, or whatever services they are conversant to. And likewise, you can design these experiments for them. Just you do in case of, there is a difference. Let me tell you, in case of virtual lab, you do not know that how the because it is ultimately based on the software which is enabling you to make the virtual lab. So you have to really experience it first on your own, that whether there is certain kind of glitches or whether the things you are trying to perform are actually being done in the way you are expected them to be. It is not obvious, just like always, like you do in offline mode. So hence you need to do it first on your own, and then you need to design it and deliver it to your students or present it to your students, so that they can carry out the same experiments, and wherever they feel they come across some kind of an obstacle, you can guide them out. Yeah.
To use to
For hello. Hello. See, hello. If I have rightly comprehended the question, that is which softwares to use for virtual lab. For example, I can tell you one thing. Let's say, since we are using the Cisco WebEx, in case of Cisco WebEx, we used to do. There are several students at one point of time. I still feel it is popular. You used to enroll for CCNA, that is Cisco Certified Network Associate. At that point of time, people used to have the Cisco virtual lab with the help of the entire simulation, where they can. So it is the service provider who is providing you certain kinds of softwares in virtual labs. Like in all leading institutes like IITs and NITs, they are running the virtual labs. For like networking, computer networking, you can use NS2. Right. And for Cisco, as I was saying, Cisco SIM and this kind of things are there. So similarly for who will be services. So these are very delivery specific or service specific kind of a software which you need to use, and you need to invest. Hardly there is something which is open source, so investment is required in this. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add with Mr. Dr. Das. So,
please.
ma'am, one thing you can look for different kind of videos and all those are present, which are based on the virtual reality and virtual reality. So, for the biology, the thing is, see, the kind of practical you are talking that in the virtual lab may not be feasible at all. Now, what is happening in the manufacturing? I can give you the example. Probably you should be able to relate with that. So, a very complex machine assembling or deassembling a machine. Nowadays, in manufacturing, the workers, the interns, learn by using the virtual reality. So what does it mean is, so every part, so based on the service provider or the software you are using, every part can be touchable and can be removable from that diagrammatic presentation of the same. And similar thing, I believe in the, so that's how the interns or the trainees learn about the complex machines before they can physically touch. So similar thing also can be applied on the biology lab or biotechnology area. So that, and I believe it should be based on the virtual reality driven experience.
Hi, this is Chaitanya. And I have a specific question for Ramaprasad. I'm a corporate lawyer and I specialize in intellectual property rights. So, can you hear me, Ramaprasad?
Yes, I can.
Yes, yeah, great. So, you mentioned that you were working with a team of 50 people, and there was a requirement for some staff augmentation, and you could take 2 resources from Bangalore. So, are we actually looking at a scenario wherein, let's say, there would be a reduction in the mass exodus of people from tier 2 cities to metros? Because are the companies more open and amenable to the idea of, let's say, engaging the or stationing the resources in even tier 2 towns or cities so that they can work from there, and as long as the work gets done, I mean, nobody really bothers where exactly the resource is located. I mean, as an organization, how open is, let's say, PwC to this kind of a concept?
Yes, so I understand. So if you are asking for my organization policy, what my organization is doing, first of all, my apology, because I am not a spokesperson of my organization for speaking out about the official policy, but I can tell you what we are doing. Probably PwC is the first company among all the consulting firms taken the approach to work from home before others could respond. So it is by our global initiative, and we went to started work from home around the 15th of March. I mean, most of the before even 1 week back of the lockdown. So we anticipated this issue, and we understood that work from home will be very much essential. Now, the official policy will be declared definitely later, but I can cite some other examples. If you look at before even this COVID situation, it was estimated that 50% of the American workforce was supposed to prefers to work from anywhere, any location. They didn't bother. They don't want to come to the office, and also they want to be freelancer. Now, among this COVID situation, you have probably heard a news about the TCS has been declaring that 75% of their workforce they plan to go work from home from within couple of years or so. So that is the situation is coming. I think that will be the new normal, because my feeling is after this COVID situation, there will be huge price pressure for any kind of service. So how to tackle those kind of price pressure? I mean, reducing the operating cost. Now, by reducing the operating cost means, yes, get the work done with low cost from anywhere. So it doesn't matter even if it's a tier 1 city or tier 2 city or tier 3 city.
Sure. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Any more question? Any more question from anyone?
Yeah, I'm Pradeep. Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Can I ask it? Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is to Agrawal sir. In his talk, he was talking about the putting the recorded things again for the perusal of the students. But the fear is that once class is going on and the same thing is put again there for the reference of the students, will the students pay attention in the class? The one that is the apprehension, because they are sure of that they are going to get the material and the whatever video or recorded things, so they may not pay attention during the class, proper class. So how to deal with this kind of situation? There is a tension certainly that the class at the same time students have the freedom of attending the same lecture, recorded things are available.
Yes, Mr. Agarwal.
So, hey, thanks for your question. Now, there is no right answer to this, right? Frankly, it depends on the grade of the class, the maturity of the students, and all of that. One would wonder, for a recorded session, the student has to spend the same amount of time going through the recording. So why would he choose to, have fun during the class, but then spend an equal amount of time separately going through the recording? But if that is the culture, given the grade of the students and maturity levels, then it is up to you to decide what's the right thing to do. It is just that this platform enables you to do that. If you had to do the same thing in a physical classroom, you would need to have a recorder recording you, and even then the quality might not be optimum. Whereas here it's just a natural thing. You just press a button, it gets recorded, and it is up to you whether you want to make it available or not. I was just highlighting the fact that we should focus on the differences which are available in a remote learning platform and the multiple options that it makes available, and then leverage them as appropriate. But it is a call that you have to take. I mean, if you are a professor, it's a call that you will have to take ultimately. The platform will provide you that facility.
Thank you. Yeah, next question, please.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, next question.
Can I ask my question?
Another question, Professor? Or... Okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, yeah. Yes,
Can I ask my
you are
question?
audible. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Oh, the most important challenge of all the 4 parameters of online is the e-content creation. This is the most challenging across different disciplines, as some of my colleagues have raised in terms of different subjects. And right now, at this moment, creation of e-content by the at the university is some kind of answer, at least in terms of my subject in accounting, finance, investment, create the data what has been already created by the other authors. Then if I have to create at this juncture, difficult time for me. So I would like the concerned professor to answer whether there could be any other answer, whether, because as he said that unless the concerned teacher creates his own e-content, students won't get the interest in the subject. So this is a paradoxical situation. I want him to answer, at least for the current period. In the long run, maybe in 1 year, I think all the faculty may be able to create their own e-content.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yes.
I'll try to answer. You have asked
Sure. Please, Rama Prasad, go ahead. Yes.
Now, let us think through that. When for any subject, be it accountancy or any subject, the first source of content is probably the book, right? And that book was not authored by the faculty who is teaching. So it has been purchased or it has been borrowed from somewhere, and the common thing has been shared across multiple institutions. Now, at this situation, you're correct. Like, it is very difficult to produce the content, but the same principle, if we see that similar thing is been shared across multiple institutions or multiple classes, I'm sure that in your institution there will be multiple faculty members, or in your fraternity there will be members who are teaching the accountancy. The right thing at this time will be to work in a collaborative manner and put a content which can be present digitally together. And it is up to the faculty how you teach it. So the same content, so let's say any kind of in the accounting system. So if I say that accounts payable, so account payable has this certain thing needs to be taught. It has, if you look the accountancy book, it has been written the similar way, but it is the faculty member who is teaching in his way, or helping the student to ingest the concept. The same thing here, the digital content can be made by a collaborative manner by faculty member together, excuse me, and same can be shared across the members. The videos, infographic, and all those things, just by shared responsibility, can be prepared in a step-by-step manner. think for the next two weeks what you are going to teach. So probably as all the organization, the institute, you'll to complete the syllabus, you will try to achieve the similar kind of teaching learning within the next 2 weeks. So 3-4 faculty members can come together and put a content together for the next 2 weeks. So step by step, if you take, don't try to think a very bigger, all the course needs to be designed at the same time. The way you used to teach in the classroom, think that in a small step, how you can put in the digital by in a collaborative manner. And that probably help you to sort this at this time.
Yeah, to adding to Rama Prasad, one more thing is that in all the subjects, especially in accountancy and these things which you are mentioning, there must be various scopes of using certain kinds of tools which will be more effective while you teach digitally. So if you can show it in form of a screencast video, which I have just now mentioned. So if you can show it in that way, that how the different tools that can be used, which may not be mentioned there in the textbooks or the course books, and the students are trying to find out the authentic, learn by watch kind of a solution. So if you are really trying to aid them with this kind of tutorials or videos, this will be an added advantage to your entire course and will definitely add value to the way you are teaching to the students. Yeah. Any more question?
Yeah, just last question. Yeah, this is Chetan, and this question is to Pankaj. Pankaj,
yes.
So are we again, staring at a situation where, let's say, people who stay in remote areas and do not have proper or poor infrastructure in terms of connectivity and all, are again at a disadvantage? Are we again looking at a scenario where the digital divide is going to widen and become more stark? Is again, coming back to the question, it's more to do with policy, but is Cisco looking at doing anything, let's say, to enhance rather the infrastructure or the connectivity in, let's say, again, not rural, but yeah, places with poor connectivity, I would say.
Yeah.
Can I just ask the question which is related to the one that Chaitanya has asked? Sure. So that you can address both the questions probably together.
Sure, Gunjan.
Sure. So, Pankaj, I'm in the training space, and very rightly what Chaitanya has pointed out is the rural sector. And my thought constantly goes on both technology that Chaitanya is talking about in terms of the digital divide and the technological access. And I'm also constantly thinking about the delivery aspect, So do we have a roadmap around that in terms of if e-learning is the new normal, then what is the delivery aspect in terms of training personnel who will eventually go down and deliver e-learning modules to people, especially in the rural sector?
Okay. I'm not sure if I understood that question well, but let me attempt to answer, and then you can correct me if I'm going in the wrong direction. So the first part of the question on whether the digital divide will increase, so to say. So one thing is clear. You look at any reports post-COVID, and they talk about the fact that more and more things, not just education, but more and more things around all kinds of businesses will move from physical to digital for a long time, right? So that is certainly going to happen. Having said that, the digital infrastructure has also been ramping up at a very, very high speed across. And we've been working very, very actively with the government on enabling that. So, I was representing the collaboration suite of offerings, including WebEx, but Cisco is the world's largest network solutions provider. So we have been working with governments, state governments across the country to help them set up a lot of these free Wi-Fi setups that you read about in so many of these tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So we are doing our bit on that, and the government also is. I think the government recognizes that ensuring digital connectivity and laying a digital infrastructure is directly related to the growth of the economy. So I think they are committed to it, and this things will keep improving every month. We are working at our end to constantly see how we can enable low bandwidth performance of our offerings. So there are a lot of things that we do. So for example, over the last 2 months, we saw our volumes go up multifold. So in March, just to give you an idea, we had 2 crore people in India using WebEx, and in April that number became 5 crore. So 5 crore meeting participants. You can think about the population of India and what that represents. So massive. So we've had to ramp up our capacity. Now, while doing that, we've brought about multiple things like reducing video resolution if required, to ensure that even people who don't have the right bandwidth are able to get that right performance. So that is something that we enable. We enable audio, so people can join meetings using various means. So if the audio on a content sharing mode is not good, you could join using your mobile for the audio, and maybe you can see the content on your laptop. So those are some of the things that we are doing. Now, the last part of your question, Gunjan, was on training the people who are going to deliver. So I will need to understand that better. So what are our thoughts on?
That's right. What are your thoughts in terms, or anybody in the panel, in terms of, see, I find it very difficult even in bigger cities to get good personnel, facilitators to deliver e-learning modules. And now my thought always goes back to the rural areas, especially when this is going to be the new norm, in terms of how are we going to ramp up both technology you've spoken about, and it's very encouraging to hear what you've said, but how are we going to ramp up in terms of the facilitation bit? Any thoughts around it? So, and this is a question open to anybody in the panel, please.
Okay, I'll just give a stab at it, just a few seconds, and then I'll let Professor Das and Mr. Ghosh are obviously more capable at addressing this question. I'll just give you a parallel example. So we enable e-medicine, for example, in healthcare, and that is something that we are actively doing in COVID time. So we enable a cart. It's like a something on wheels which has video conferencing equipment, and it can be wheeled into a hospital ward with patients. Using that, an expert doctor can interact with the patient, almost as good as him being there, interact with nurses and patients. Now with this, that expert doctor who might have attended to maybe 50 patients in a day is able to attend to 500 patients. Now just using that as a parallel to say that when digital means are enabled, a fewer skilled resources can actually scale up to provide their services to a larger set of people. So I'm guessing something similar would happen in e-learning as well. So that's just my perspective, and now letting
makes sense.
address
makes
that.
sense. I think the outreach is going to be huge. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pankaj.
Isn't it? That probably some connectivity issues and things like that may be there in case of rural areas. Was that also a part of the question?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
One thing is that for answering it in the primary question, answering the primary question, what I would like to say that one, if not that much of technically advanced kind of things are there at certain places in rural areas, since you are apprehensive about the kind of presenter, those who are present at those kind of places. So one may start with the easy thing, which I was saying, that is the tabletop videos, where you can just have a mobile and that is shooting whatever you are writing there on the blackboard or on your paper, and a kind of video which is being there. That is the shooting part. Then the problem is in dissemination, since there is a lack of connectivity. So there probably we need to maintain some kind of hardware resources like the disk drives and things like that, which we can keep as a storage material for the time being, as long as the connectivity is not getting enriched. And we can also spread this at different hours, because if you are storing it and we are also spreading it among the students with the help of pen drives and things like that, the e-learning platform is still there, but there is only lack of connectivity which is there. So once that is being taken care of with the kind of 5G connectivity that we are envisioning these days, it will be spread more and more across the country. So we will be having that problem sorted out as well. So for the time being, we may focus on hardwares in those areas where connectivity is less, but then we can still start with this process of e-learning. Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I mean, we can always look at a hybrid model, perhaps. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you.
Any more question? Or yeah, Indranil, do we have time for any more question? Hello. Acha, 5 minutes time is still there. Yeah, any more question from any of the participants? Well, I think for now, all the questions that were being asked has been addressed. And I'm really thankful to the speakers who have contributed nicely to this entire session, initiating from Mr. Ramaprasad, who has emphasized on the importance of difference of teacher-driven and self-paced learning, and how collaborative effort is really helpful for learning the things with the help of blogs and wikis, and also about the different aspects of engaging the students with the help of online platforms. And last but not the least, Mr. Agarwal, who has really shown some different ways and means that how Cisco is going to help the students and how innovative one can be with the help of the platforms that those are being provided by Cisco, those virtual platforms which are very much effective for these virtual e-learning platforms. As well as he has also shown concern regarding the challenges and security and challenges of security and privacy in e-learning, which can be well taken care of with the security protocols which are being designed by Cisco, and Cisco might be having some kind of proprietary protocols which may be applied in this kind of scenario and encryption kind of a scenario. So hopefully that will be more and more beneficial for this kind of a setup to ensure security and seamless transmission of information. And as far as my session is concerned, I tried to emphasize on certain things based on what are the different types and categories of learning, and how Xavier Institute of Social Service is really imparting this kind of an online educational service to larger community, so that more and more people get benefited out of the intellect of the professors or of the different resources which XISS is having here at Ranchi. And also I have emphasized on the different ways on how you can create the videos along with the softwares, some open source softwares which I have mentioned in my presentation. And I would like to thank all the panelists who were there, and also to CII and Indranil, Kunal, and the IT help desk as well, for providing this wonderful opportunity and providing this wonderful environment. My gratitude to all the participants for their encouragements and for their wonderful questions, which have also enriched us while we were answering the questions. Over to Indranil now. Indranil.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of the day 2 of this webinar series. Tomorrow we'll have the third session on education and par with industry expectation. During the same time, I would be sharing the link for tomorrow shortly. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you, CII.
Thanks for watching my channel Curious Neuron, enhancing skill sets. You may visit my professional profile at LinkedIn. My research interests and publication details are there in Scopus. My Scopus profile is there along with my ORCID ID. I am also available for you in other research profiles, namely ResearchGate, Google Scholar, and ORCID. You can get in touch with me for industry academia collaboration, for faculty development programs, for management development programs, for invited sessions and lectures, collaborative research, consultancies, PhD supervision, patent ideas, research writing tips, career guidance suggestions, and many more such academic activities. You may ping me at rigdas78@gmail.com. Thank you.